Don't worry about the language. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to MuzzyBuzz. It's been a long time. What is going on? I'm actually back. I've been busy with work, busy with other things, and so finally I get the chance to come back and be live. And this is in no particular order, so I'm gonna let people go ahead and jump in for the meantime. Right now, I'm gonna go ahead and load the chat here. For some reason, let me see here. I don't know why my chat thing is not actually working for some reason. I don't know why, but I'll have to double check that and see why it's not working. But anyways, we're gonna let people jump in and jump in the live session here. Hold on here. Let me try to get some things working here. Let me see here. The properties. Okay, let me go ahead and go to my live dashboard. Alaikum assalam, Mermies. How you doing, buddy? A long time no see. Let me just get the new updated pop-out chat here so I can actually watch it. I haven't been online for a while. Been kind of busy with some things, and so I just needed to figure that out, actually. Yes, here. Let me see if I can get this going. Paste, okay. All right. All right. There we go. So let me go ahead and switch on to the regular mode, not studio. So give me a moment here. Okay, this looks good. I better tell Tanzim. Yeah, you might want to. So some of you guys know that I actually did a debate or a discussion with our good friend Yasser Mursi. And I must say, sorry, that was my first time meeting him. And I never talked to him before, never had him on social media, never had the opportunity to actually engage with him. I must say he was a very polite and very cordial individual, very nice brother. He was not arrogant in any way, at least with me. I know there's some beef going on between Mohammed Gilan and him and the whole Australian scene, and everybody has their own their beef going on. So I'm not really worried about that. I care about how people deal with me, and generally in terms of discussions, people can tend to get heated sometimes. So I'm not worried about that. But yeah, I had a fun time doing the debate. The debate, for those of you that don't know, was about CRT, and it was about critical race theory. And I have my views on those. I don't really think that critical race theory has provided anything different than what we already know about in Islam, meaning that in Islam, we already know that racism is wrong, and we know that any power structure that thrives on racial inequality is wrong. That is exactly why we have Islam in the first place. So I don't see why we have to really spend too much time on CRT, in my opinion. One of the arguments people bring forward is that, why are you so worried about the LGBTQ agenda, and why not about critical race theory and so forth and so on? Well, I think it's because the LGBTQ agenda is being pushed on us in such a way that is different than critical race theory. I literally don't know of any Muslims that believe that you can incorporate racism within Islam, right? If you guys know of any groups that are doing that, by all means, bring them to my attention. But for the most part, for me, I don't know of any groups that would say that, you can be racist and you can be Muslim, right? But I do know about groups that are saying that you can be gay and you can be Muslim, like you can be a homosexual sodomite. Let me clarify that. You can be a sodomite and be a Muslim. And meaning, now inherently, sodomy is a sin, right? But what we're talking about is people who are making the argument that sodomy is not a sin. right? I'm not in the business of judging people who make sins. Everybody makes sins, and Allah can forgive anybody, and He can bring them back to His religion. I'm speaking specifically about those individuals that believe that that committing the act of sodomy is not a sin, and that is, to me, very problematic. I think that is worse than anything we've seen before. Now, if there is a Muslim out there who's arguing that, hey, you know what, we can be racist, or we should be racist, and if you are a racist, in fact, it is allowed within Islam, then sure, I would have the same problem with these individuals, because they're taking an element of Islam and they're radically changing it into something which is not Islam. And I feel like that, and that has happened with the LGBTQ agenda. And one might say, well, you know what, it's not in your face, or, it's not always there, and it's not really a big issue. But I feel like it is being a big issue. I feel like they are pushing it in your face, and I feel like they are, trying to make it more mainstream, and they are trying to bring people up. Wa alaikum assalam, what's going on, boys in the Cape? So yeah, I do feel like these kinds of issues are a little bit more important than racism or feminism or whatever it may be, just for the simple fact that that people are more affected by these things. Let me see. Red Hat Tiny Brain. What about the ones who pretend racism doesn't affect people's lives? Well, those people, in my opinion, are either racist themselves or they're complete idiots. They're oblivious to the reality. Racism, even now, okay, now I can speak for America. Racism has never been gone in America. It's never been eradicated in America. In America, all we did is mask the symptoms of racism, which is discrimination, right? We made it sound that, for example, that it became illegal now to essentially to discriminate against somebody because of the color of their skin, because of the way they look, or maybe their accent and their background, whatever it may be, right? But inherently, we haven't tackled the issue of racism and explained why racism is actually wrong, right? We just simply said, hey, you're free to have your opinions, but you can't bring that into the world in a fashion that, or in a way in which it takes away the rights of other people. But how do we measure that? Like, how do we know that somebody didn't get hired because he was black? They could have said many different things, like, oh, we're sorry, your application was at the bottom, or we found another candidate. You would never really know, right? And in that way, it's almost virtually impossible to get away with racism. But what we can do is make it officially ban, and say that, hey, it's not, you can't, institute practices based on race, right? Which would be institutionalized racism. But racism exists no matter what. Of course, Red Hat. But let me ask you this, Red Hat. Are we going to ever be completely done with racism? Can we ever come to a point where we can say the world is not racist anymore? Now, if you believe that, kudos to you. I believe that you're very optimistic. I tend to take a more conservative opinion on that matter and say I don't believe that people will be in the world as a be done with racism. I think we have some deep rooted issues, and it predates even America or the West or any of these things. This is going back to the time of the Prophet and even before the prophets. We're talking about Hindu caste systems. I mean, we're talking about racism that has been deep rooted in humanity, and for one reason or the other. So to say that, I think it's naive to believe that we would somehow eradicate racism. But I do feel like we can take preemptive measures. No, not at all. I think we should do more to prevent that. But complaining about it all the time, I don't see if that's going to be how that's helpful, Red Hat. I think coming up with policies is better than saying, you know what, because look, Red Hat, let me sorry, Reda and other people, let me give you, I'll come back to your question, but let me just in dialogue with Red Hat for a moment. So the thing is, Red Hat says, so we should give up and accept it as a given in our world and let racism run roughshod over us. So the thing is that I don't believe we should give it up, but I don't believe it should run my life either, right? I'm a brown-skinned person. You can tell. People always confuse me for being Hispanic or for being maybe black or mulatto or mixed or whatever you have, right? I mean, I can't pass for a white person. So inevitably in my life, There probably have been times where people have profiled me, where people have not given me a job, which I don't even know about. Like, I really don't know if that happened or not. There's no way of me proving that. I'm sure I've had some people who have given me cold shoulders, or maybe treated me differently, and I probably didn't put two and two together. But did I stop there? Did I say, well, it's because of that reason I didn't get a job or that? I wouldn't focus on that. I would be more of the perception that, hey, look, it exists. Let me find my way around it, right? Let me find someone who will accept me for who I am, and I'd rather work or be around those kinds of people. That's just my opinion, right? I mean, policy is very rough. I mean, how many policies can you say? You can find loopholes in any policy you create, right? I mean, literally, racism is something that you feel inside, and no one can really know about that, right? Well, I think because a lot of the activism is really just complaining. I don't think it creates any policies. I mean, is there anyone in the government that says that you can actually be racist? I don't know. Like, I don't know what more you can do as far as policy-wise. Create more studies? What? I mean, maybe specific for the African American community as far as, about what they're going through. I'm sure they have specific needs. No, I'm not saying it's useless. I'm saying I think we've brought enough policies forward, Red Hat. I feel like that I don't know what more we can do with policies. Like, if there's more policies that are there that are effective, sure. But just for the sake of passing policy for talking about it, I don't see what the benefit in that is, right? Policies like not discriminating against somebody because of the color of their skin, like not denying them a loan, not denying them housing, not denying them a job, not denying them medical attention, right? These kinds of things we've already passed in America, right? I mean, I don't see what in terms of what more we can do as an official level. I mean, if you want to talk about it, I mean, that's fine. I just don't see how that's going to convince anybody. To a racist, he's just going to say, oh, a bunch of people complaining again. Who cares? Right? He's not going to change his mind. If a racist doesn't want to change his mind, you're not going to change his mind. Right? All we can do is make policies that guarantee their rights. And I think we've done that for the most part. I don't know of a single law in America or a right in America that whites have that blacks don't have, right? Now, is that to say there's no racism? No. I'm just saying officially, by rights, we all have the same rights, right? But it is a long discussion. I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm just saying for me, that's why I don't dwell on it. If you feel it is important enough and that you're making a difference in talking about policy and bring attention to it, and you feel like you're actually being productive, then by all means do it. For me, I don't feel like it's productive. I'd rather focus on the end goal and say, hey, look, I've got some goals here, and I recognize these are my hurdles. I'm going to get over them, and I'm going to find and work with people who actually want to work with me rather than complaining about the people who don't want to work with me. So let me see let's go back to what Reda has says. Reda E Films. Okay. Red Hat, you're just the privileged boy. No, I don't know. I don't think we should get involved in like attacking each other in that sense. But so, Reda, originally your comment, what do you think of Ertugrul season 5 in regards to contemporary world as in the Mongols controlling everything and all the powerful Muslims compromising? Well, that's a very interesting, how do I put it? A parallel. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, Maliki Click. My good brother from another mother. Ala rasi habibi. Welcome to the chat. So I love Ertugrul. For those of you that don't know, I'm an Ertugrul fanatic. Sure, I don't wear those, Turkic hats and the beads and the rings and the cuffs and stuff, but I love the show. I think it's an exemplary show of what we should be coming out with as far as content today. And speaking of that now, Reda, I don't want to put you on the spot, brother. But speaking in light of Ertugrul and just what the discussion here, I feel like part of Rajula, part of being a man is also being very much in control of yourself, right? Because unfortunately for all of us, emotionalism controls us sometimes, right? Like we become so emotionally invested into something where we can't say, hey, you know what? I agree to disagree. If you feel like it's working for you or you're happy with that, by all means. These are not issues of aqa'id, right? Not issues that matter to our religion or aqidah. So for me, if it's not related to those things, and it's not a matter of Sharia, by all means, brother, have your opinion. Engage me. If I feel like you can convince me, sure. But I don't want to spend too much time on it either. But hey, let's be in control. Let's be men of principle. Let's be men of control, right? That'll be a very good thing. But Ertugrul is, oh, were you the one that made the film? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. That film was great. I loved it. I mean, you guys were riding your horses. You guys were doing the sword fights. For those of you that know, maybe you can post the link in the chat so people can check it out. I did spread it on my Facebook, I think, and my Twitter feed as well too. But let's go back to the original question. I digress. Can we relate the modern day situation of Muslim leaders to those who were those leaders who are working with modern governments in comparison to characters in the Ertugrul story that were working with the Mongols? I think there are comparisons in some ways yes, some ways no. In one way, some of those individuals were seeking power, right? Like that was their objective, that hey, we want to get power. I want power. Like Al-Basti, right? Al-Basti, his whole game is power. Right? He doesn't care about the well-being of his people. He doesn't care about the legacy of his father, of his tribe. He doesn't care about any of that. He cares about being this totally badass, butcher. I compare Al-Basti to be like the Shabiha. In the I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Syrian conflict, but there are the Shabiha with thugs that were working for the Assad regime, and they were like low down criminals that were going around and low key and kidnapping people and incarcerating them and doing all kinds of thuggery. And I equate Al-Basti to the Shabiha. Like they just wanted power. If they got, their hashish, they got their women, they got their drugs, their alcohol, their homes, their money, they didn't care, right? They're good. And that's kind of what Al-Basti represents, right? I'm going to be as corrupt as I can be as long as it benefits me, and me, right? Me, myself, and I. Then you have other Muslims or leaders in Ertugrul, or characters, that were compelled to work with the Mongols because they feared for their lives. That's an interesting point. 1 second, let me drink some Kool-Aid. Oh, that's good, alhamdulillah. Look, there are people that, and Islam allows a leeway. For example, we have a concept of taqiyya, right? Meaning if your life is in danger, Allah has given you a way to preserve your life. And I feel like if there are some Muslim leaders who feel like the harm of not being cooperative in that moment is greater, then I cannot judge them, and it'll be between them and Allah, because Allah will know the true reality of that situation, right? You understand what I'm saying? And so those situations are unique, and it's very easy for us who are not in position, us laymen, us non-politicians who are not in those positions, to actually go ahead and engage with individuals like that, right? I mean, because of and say, you know what, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, right? But in the end, we really don't know, right? I mean, so. Whoops, hold on 1 second. Let me just get this link here for people to join in. Hold on here. People are wanting the link. Okay. Yes. So again, the thing is, where was I? Lost my mind. Oh, yes. So there's people that will fall into that category, and Allah knows best. But I feel like the comparison is there, though. I feel like that that Muslims need to realize that we are in a position of the Mongols in which we have a force from outside that is dominant and very scary. But not only are they playing a game of physical warfare, they're also playing a game of intellectual warfare, right? What does that mean? Jazakumullah khair, ya Maliki. It means that it is a battle of the hearts and minds, right? Not only are they attacking you physically, but they're now trying to tell you what your religion is, right? They're trying to now redefine your religion on an intellectual and an ideological front. And that in some cases is much more dangerous. And you know what? That is, as a matter of fact, what Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, had to deal with. Because he had a group of the Mongols that believed that some of their laws were better or were like, that could be, they pick and chose, right? They cherry pick. They said, you know what? We like some from Sharia, and we like some from the Mongol laws, right? And we're going to mix them. And Ibn Taymiyyah says, you know what? You can't do that. Either you accept Islam, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu idkhulu fi silmi kafa, right? Meaning, oh, you who have believed, enter Islam completely. Don't have a half foot here and half foot there. You can't just have and say, you know what, I'm going to have my foot there and my foot here and pick and choose what I like. No, we can't do that. And so Ibn Taymiyyah was confronted with that, with the Tartars. And he said, you know what, either you accept it all in entirety or we will fight you. And Allah Azza wa Jal is going to be the one that will give us victory. And he had to face that. And I think today, ideologically, we're on that same pathway where we have to stand our ground and say, you know what? This is what Muslims believe. We're not going to compromise on our beliefs. This is what we have been sent. This is what we have been, it has been revealed to us. And we're not going to change. And some people will like it and some people will not. But from what history can tell us is that even non-Muslims always respected Muslims that had principle. Even if they disagreed with them, they knew that they were men of principle, that they would never turn their back on their words. They were not wishy-washy, right? They knew that when a Muslim gave him a word, that he would keep it. Why? Because he was unwavering in his religion. It's important, right? So again, these kinds of things are character building. It's tarbiyah. Right? A lot of these things we've lost today, right? We've lost them. We say, you know what? It's not a big deal anymore. Absolutely, Maliki. We have non-Muslims that are teaching us our religion today. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? Like they're bringing them to conferences. They're bringing them on podcasts and things like that to tell us about our deen. The also problem with my people with Yemenis is that we are very pessimistic about the future. Oh, of course. I mean, I don't want to get into the whole dialogue of Yemen and what's happening in Yemen. I mean, I have my own views about what should be happening in Yemen between the south and the north and things like that. But the thing is, being complacent is a problem, right? Being complacent, being, how do I put this? Being accepting of injustice is never okay, right? It is never okay, right? It's never okay to be complacent or to be unmoved by injustice. It should at least bother you in your heart, right? It should never be able to justify it. You have Muslims going, absolutely. And you know what? I don't mind that so much as long as it's not their primary focus, Kobe Williams. As long as like they have some traditional understanding. If they want to go into academia to cause influence or to see what Orientalists have to say about Islam, by all means, go forth. But don't rely on that. You know, since when did Islam say, you know what, you can get a 4-year degree and now you're a sheikh or an alim? Right? We never had that before. Nowadays, you can spend enough time in university and you are a scholar, right? When did that happen? What happened to ijaza and, right, ilm al-rijal and things like this? When did that happen? Where did that go? Right? We lost it. Rada Film says, general idea is that Arabs need to take their knowledge and skills gained here and of course and take it back home and fix rather than get stuck with the pleasure of this country. So look, I think that's twofold though. Other films, like for example, my family, I'm a first generation here, but there are people that are Muslims in general for sure. I agree, but don't forget there are Muslims that are born Muslims in America, right? And there are Muslims that are reverts to Islam, right? They've been here for generations, for 6 generations, and they converted to Islam. They become Muslims, black brothers, white brothers, or maybe Mexican brothers, right? So where do they go, right? They don't just abandon. The idea is that we should collectively create initiatives overseas. Do not be selfish, right? If we can take technology here that we have and create initiatives to, let's say, bring running water to Somalia or to parts of Yemen, or for example, like during the war, and they need to have electricity. If we can bring some type of solar panel initiative or alternative that we can get, different manufacturing ways or whatever it may be, and bring that to Yemen by coalitions, by NGOs, right? And I hate to use this as an example, but the Jews have done a very good job of this. Right? They live in the West. They take full advantage. They reside here, but they become dual nationals. They also they're heavily involved with their own country back home, their Jewish state. And that is something we should also do. Right? Allahumma ameen ya maliki. Alhamdulillah, the Prophet ﷺ made many praises of the people of Ahl al-Yemen, and we're not worried about that, inshallah. There's the hadith, and there is, we have that amana, so I'm not worried. In the end, Allah will rectify the affairs of Yemen, and it's been there in the past, and it'll be there in the future, bi-idhnillah. Right, so yeah, exactly, Maliki. That's my point. I don't think it's anything wrong to understand, and I think a lot of ways we can also take a hint from the Chinese and the Indian Hindus that have risen to some prominence in America, right? In the manner in which they've done it. So there's no problem. Muslims and scholars traditionally in the past have benefited from other cultures and individuals. So I say we do what the Vidisi family did for Italy before they were probably as bad as we were, but after building schools, patronizing us. Well, we had that. Before that, rather, we had Al-Andalus. We had Spain. We had paved roads. We had hospitals. We had libraries. We had public bathhouses. We had all of that. So while Europe was in the Dark Ages, we focused on education. Can you imagine this for a moment? Okay, some of my family originally, they were Yemenite Jews, okay? And so this is early in history. So anyone who knows this will tell you that there's a very famous rabbi. His name is the Rambam, okay? He's probably one of the most famous commentators on the Talmud, okay? Which is like, the Talmud is kind of like their tafsir of the Torah. It's like the exegesis of this, right? He lived in Andalus. He lived there and he studied among the scholars in Al-Andalus, and he wrote a very famous treatise to Yemen, the Jews of Yemen, called the Igarat Tayman. And he wrote it to them. And he said, obviously he had criticisms of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being a Jew. He had criticisms of him for sure. But in that famous writing, or the letters to Yemen, epistles of Yemen, he actually said that Muslims and Jews worship the same God, that Muslims do not know any paganism, that if a Jew were not to find himself in a place where there is no synagogue, he cannot pray in a church but can pray in a masjid. That is the understanding the Rambam had, Moshe bin Maymun had for the Muslims, and because he lived in Andalus. And actually to the point where when Isabel and Ferdinand continued their aggression and they had the Reconquista of Spain, they forced all the Jews out of Andalus, or the Sephardic Jews, or Spagadi as they call them. They went into North Africa and other places in the Islamic world, and the Rambam himself went into Egypt and became the doctor, the physician for the king of Egypt at that time. So you can imagine, the nearness and the relationship of how they benefited from each other. And there's no problem with that, right? There's no problem with working with other people and also focusing on education. There's a very famous story about Al-Andalus, and I don't know how true it is, and I've heard it here and there. I read it a long time ago, but I think it's very interesting, and I'll put it here. There was spies of some of the Crusaders, okay, and they used to come into Andalus and they would say, we want to know when to attack the Muslim empire in Spain. We need to reclaim Spain. And so they would send spies every now and then. So the spy was there, and he came back and returned back to his, general or whoever it was among the Christian empire, and he says, well, what have you found about the Muslims in Spain, about the condition in Spain? Is it ripe for our taking now? And he says, no, absolutely not. They spend all of their time studying their books religiously, and they also are spending their time in studying secular education or the sciences. So he says, okay, go back and investigate more, spy more. So he comes back a few years later. He says, what about now? He says, no, there's still, I saw some kids crying, in the street, but they're really frustrated with science, but they're really involved in their science, so, and education. And for them, science meant everything, right? Not just, they didn't realize, right? It could be the social sciences, it could be the religious sciences, it could be anything, right? For them, they didn't really know the difference. It was just sciences to them. So a few years later, he comes back and he goes, okay, well, what have you reported now? And he says, can we take Spain now? Is it ripe for the taking? And at that point, he says, yes, we can take them. And he says, why? What happened? What changed? And he said, before, the youth were crying over the fact that they couldn't solve scientific problems. And now, the youth are crying over the fact that a woman will not love them. So they have moved away from their sciences and their traditional studies and have gone more into this, materialistic type of atmosphere. And so that was legend has it that was the moment Christendom realized that they could invade and give their, move on to Spain, because it does, of course it does, Radu. Allah says to tell, in the Quran, He gives frequent mentions about looking into their surroundings and recognizing the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in nature. And He asks you to actually think about it and to ponder upon it, because it makes a difference, right? People who are open to it, Allah will guide them through the nature. And I think a lot of the scientific advancements that we've made is by doing precisely that. So I think that's a very good idea. I think that we should focus more on education and literacy and bringing people up. And well, hey, Red Hat Tiny Brain. It's unfortunately sad, right? I mean, look, and I think I don't want to be a complete robot here. Of course, things like mahabba and love, these are important for any human being, right? We human beings have been created so that we have, we want partners, we want to have, we are garments for one another. I think what the lesson to be learned here is that when you begin to obsess over these things, when you begin to, when it is an improper relationship, and when you are, when you are unhappy with the content, or when you're not content with the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? The Muslim always says alhamdulillah for everything. Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal, right? No matter what happens, alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. No matter whatever is good or bad, the Muslim is always content. Unfortunately, today, we're always trying to challenge that qadr of Allah. Why is it this way? Why is it that way? Why couldn't it be this way? Well, who says this is actually wrong, right? You ever notice that we're always trying to push the envelope for some reason? We're never satisfied, right? We're always in this state of ghafla, right? We're always like, oh my God, like we're not in easiness, right? It's interesting if you think about it, right? Rada says it stems from not understanding that there is a destiny for you and that there are things that are meant to be. You have to have faith and strong sense of self. You can't be sad someone doesn't. Exactly. I mean, this goes back to one of the articles of Iman, al-Qada wal-Qadr, right? We believe in this, that everything happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nothing that is not written for us will not happen, right? So, I'm sorry, anything that is not written for us will not happen. Right? We have to be content with that. And we are content and we are in submission. That is the reason why we are Muslims, right? We are the slaves and we are in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we accept that. So yeah, I mean, I think these are essential principles that are important. I think a lot of people know that, but unfortunately, some people, when it comes to implementing that in their lives, they have difficulty doing that. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to not make us among people who feel like that, and to make our hearts content, and to make our desires content, and to always be happy with the decree of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. You know, because to be in that position is a very arrogant position. That is what precisely is what drove the shaitan Iblis to become the shaitan, right? Where he was not happy with the fact that Allah has created him from nar, and Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam from turab, from dirt, right? From teen, from clay as well too, right? So the idea is that that we cannot be arrogant in that regards, right? Allah will give you what you deserve, and Allah is not unjust. And there's a hadith, I believe, where it says, assume good about your Lord, because your Lord is as you assume of him, right? So if you assume bad about Allah, Allah will be evil to you. If you assume good about Allah, Allah will be good for you, right? So think positive about your Lord, all right? Yes, unfortunately, there's issues with shame and things like this nowadays. Let me see. Let me tell you something. In Yemen, everyone and every kid has to access to an AK. You never hear of, yes, of course. I know. These are, I mean, for crying out loud, we walk around with a jambiya. Every kid has a knife that's about 6 inches long. I mean, a jambiya is hanging on your waist. You don't find people stabbing each other. You never find it. It doesn't happen in Yemen. So, I mean, it's just there's something going on. And I think it has to do with the family structures in America. Unfortunately, the family structure, including in the Muslim world, is deteriorating, right? We're moving away from the traditional family structure where we respect the mother and father, where equally they work to raise the children. And even the village itself, even the community itself, works together to raise children properly, and to avoid any type of fawahish from reaching the community in general, right? Nowadays, we're all focused on individualism. It's no more collectivism, right? You want to grow a pink mohawk and walk around, by all means. You want to pierce your nose in 8 different ways, go ahead. You want to go around and pierce your private parts, go ahead. You want to walk around naked, go ahead. Whatever makes you happy. It's all about being happy, right? It's not about the consequences anymore. So, yes, unfortunately, that is why I have difficulty when some of our brothers want to embrace liberalism in the West and embrace liberal ideologies. I feel like that it can be a very dangerous thing if it's not controlled. Likewise, brothers that want to go extremely to the right as well too, and embrace right-wing, white supremacist ideologies. Both things are, any extremity is bad, right? We are, as the Quran says, ummatan wasata. We are the middle nation. We shouldn't be extreme on either way, right? So, 1 second. Let's drink some more Kool-Aid here. For those of you down south, they call Kool-Aid, they call it sugar water. So because it's all sugar, but sugar water and mayonnaise sandwiches. That was I think it's a southern snack or pastime. Anyways, so what do you guys want to talk about now? I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. There's lots of news going on in American politics. The impeachment hearings are going on. There was testimonies by the former ambassador and the other ambassador before that. Very interesting stuff happening, right? It's very interesting things that are happening and unfolding. I don't know if it's going to be enough to compel the American public to actually, the Senate to impeach or convict him. But I do feel like the Democrats will probably end up impeaching him. I think they're trying to bring everything public and try to motivate the independent voters to try to make them realize that Trump is not the grade A option. Most likely, Red Hat Tiny. Most likely because of the fact that it's very difficult to remove an incumbent president. And also, all he has to do, essentially, Red Hat, is to reverse the tariffs on China, and the economy would go soaring. And if that happens, it's very hard to remove a president who has a very good economy, because everybody loves money, right? Cash rules everything around me. Cream. Dollar bill, y'all. Right? So that's just what it is. More a while ago, you said it best a while ago about how capitalism tries to keep people alone because it's the best way to make money. Yes, absolutely. I mean, but I do believe that capitalism is a system in which, if it's used properly, can be a very effective tool for making money. It's a very good engine for making money, right? But it must have a strong and ethical government to keep a very watchful eye over it, so it does not, it does not, swallow the less fortunate and spit them out. Now, Andrew Yang, he is interesting. I just don't think that he is empathetic enough for people. I think that, $1,000, it is good, but how does he plan to do that? I just haven't really found it. I think he has a lot of options. A lot of proposals. I just don't feel like how he'll make it happen. But I think that he has very interesting ideas about, talking points that need to be highlighted. For example, the threat of automation. Right? The threat of automation is a very real threat. Most of these people don't realize that in 10 to 20 years, right, most of these mundane tasks that people do, like mowing the lawn, delivering things, truck driving, delivering paper, are all going to be gone. It's literally going to be taken over by AI, robots, and robotic process automation. Right? It's pretty much not going to be around anymore. It's a very important thing. He recently rubbed elbows with some white supremacists. Oh, well, what was that conversation about? Maybe you can give us a link. We can watch it live here. Do you have that link for Red Hat Tiny? I can just put it in the chat here. We can actually watch it and comment on it live. It'd be kind of fun to do that. Maybe we can see what happened. Democrats destroyed their own morals and self to say that the crazy hunters of the crazy extreme left because they... crazy hungers of the extreme left because they have a powerful Twitter voice. Yes. Believe it can be, Rada. Trust me. In 20 years, believe me, Rada. They're going to replace it. You think a lawnmower? Look at this. I have a vacuum robot. It vacuums my home. I leave for the office, I hit the button, and it vacuums my entire house. You don't think that they could vacuum, they could run a lawnmower on your lawn with AI by surfing your boundaries? You know what I mean? But by checking out your boundaries and then having a lawnmower run around and do that and hedge your lawn. And sure, maybe landscaping in the sense that diagramming and then, actually, coming out with a plan. But it can definitely sense it. It's like trimming things to a certain specification, right? That can be done automatically. Right now, they're harvesting crops automatically. Farmers are doing that, right? So this is not far off. This is very, very real, my brother. It's very, very real. It'll happen. They have entire warehouses that don't have a single person picking anything from bins. It's all robots that run over, like on grid lines. It's pretty crazy. Well, let me give you this, rather. Do you think what do you think is more complex? Feeling the earth and landscaping, or feeling the human body and performing a surgery? What do you think requires more touch and feel? Obviously, touching the human body and performing a surgery, right? They're able to pretty much automate some of these things now. If they can automate that, my brother, they can definitely automate lawn care. Okay? It's just that maybe about 20 to 30 years it'll be done. A lot of testing will happen. And at the very least, like what Red Hat Tiny is saying, maybe they'll have one foreman on the site, right? But instead of having 30 people carrying bricks back and forth, they're going to have one huge robot that's going to carry this huge load of bricks and then pave them down and and all that kind of stuff. right? Of course it's sad, but I don't think it's necessarily sad, Retta. I think what it means is we have to anticipate this and find out that our technology is changing. Let me give you an example. For example, Retta, beforehand, before the calculator came out, you actually had people in accounting software, you actually had people that had to keep ledgers, bookkeepers. Bookkeepers these days are gone. Like, everything's done by automatic ledgers and software now, right? And calculators. Now, was it sad for those people? Yes. But they had to learn a new skill, right? They learned a new skill and they ended up applying that and they've become more efficient in what they're doing, right? So we can become more efficient. Can you imagine, rather, if we could become more efficient, have more time to ourselves, and we can charge these robot taxes and the government will give us a stipend? And we can have more time for family, less 9 to 5 hours, right? Or more time innovating or creating things. It could be a whole new world. It could be a whole new world that we don't know about, right? So there's pros and cons of technology. I think about my grandfather, alayhi rahmah. When he came, he was born in 1887 and he lived all the way up until 1990, I think. And he saw the invention of so many things: the airplane, the train, the color TV, the telegraph, the sonograph, refrigeration. You name it. All these computers, mobile phone, typewriters, you name it, right? All these things he saw, But except what's going to happen is corporations are going. That's where they will get rich. No problem. Well, I don't think it's call it socialism or not. I don't believe the world is so binary like that. Red. I think if anyone's I don't think we have complete socialism anywhere or complete capitalism anywhere. They work in tandem. In America, we have social programs and we have a capitalist economy, right? So I don't think it's so black and white. For those people that would cry about that, well, cry about disability, cry about Social Security, cry about, veterans benefits, cry about disability, cry about, Medicare and Medicaid, right? So, yeah, who knows? There's definitely, something to keep an eye out, right? It's really an important, an important thing to keep an eye out for because you never know what will happen, right? So it's important that we actually, figure out what is, how do we plan for the future? I think it's really important that we do that and not to essentially miss out on any opportunities. But if we don't work hard for what we have, I think we still have to work hard, but just in a different way, right? Like, instead of spending time doing physical work, we'll probably spend more time doing capacity planning and using our minds more, planning and innovating and finding new applications for things, right? Like that kind of stuff we'll be doing, right? Rather than just actually physically having to build something, rather than do physical labor. Right? Sure. We're going to have to make some radical lifestyle changes. We're going to have to make sure that we don't, have this majority of the population end up in a sedentary lifestyle, right? We need to make sure there's programs where people begin to, use their bodies more, right? There's a whole lot of things that we're going to have to do, right? But one thing we know for sure is automation and robotics is inevitable. It is going to come in the future. It's there's no doubt about it. Undoubtable. It's going to happen. Either you embrace it and you plan for it now, or you'll catch yourself in the middle of the storm not knowing what to do when it comes to you in 10 to 15 years. Mark my words, your children will probably be taught by robots. Your grandchildren or children will be taught by robots. And I'm telling you, it's going to happen. All right. Well, of course, if Allah doesn't want it to happen, maybe He'll send something like an EMP that will destroy every single electronic thing in the world. Allahu alam, right? Maybe you go back to the days of there's some hadith which talk about when we're talking about akhir zaman, we're talking about the end of time. It talks about how people will go back to riding horses and things like that. Allahu alam what that means, whether it means like it's because of technology breaking or because the environment would be so overpopulated that they will need to go back to resorting to horses because they don't have enough ability to enough cars or transportation vehicles or whatever it may be. Who knows? Allahu alam. But it could even be something like an EMP where the whole grid gets knocked out and you can't run anything for 20, 30 years. Allahu alam. But regardless of this is part of tawakkul, right? Tawakkul ala Allah. Right now we see that there's a trend happening, right? We see a trend happening and we see that automation is coming. Well, that's a very good field. I mean, I am in IT myself, and my entire company is one of my big focuses for my team is pushing them into RPA, which is robotic process automation, right? You know what I mean? Where we don't have to do a mundane task of having help desk answer a phone call. Right, everything's automated. So, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, the Prophet ﷺ says that to be with the army of Sham, and if you can't be with them, then be with the army of Yemen. So, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, we see it but then again, at that time, it's also a very dangerous time as well, too, right? So, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect us from any harm and from any hardship, and make us among those people that, who die upon La ilaha illallah. Man akhir kalamuhu la ilaha illallah wa dakhal al-jannah. Right, that's the hadith, right? So whoever whose last words are La ilaha illallah, he will have a place for himself in Jannah. But anyways, so that's interesting happening in the IT world and stuff like that. So it's good that more brothers are entering IT. By the way, I encourage all brothers who like to have more time on their hands to jump into IT. I know it's boring. I'm in IT, but trust me, I have so much time, extra time because of IT. I can work remotely. I can do a lot of things. And the higher you progress, and the less technical it becomes for you, and the more managerial it becomes, and so you have a little bit more flexibility. So IT is a very good alternative to people, rather than being doctors or all this stuff. Oh no problem. We benefit from each other, brother. I mean, we all here, if we can help each other navigate, throughout this troublesome world, then we're doing each other a favor, right? This is part of brotherhood, right? So we all benefit from each other. Without you guys tuning in, I mean, I don't have that many people tuning into me right now, but you guys are core fans and supporters of mine. So I appreciate you guys. I do this stuff for you guys, right? And I apologize that I haven't been on much more. I plan to do things more regular because of the fact that I have more time now. So inshallah, we'll do more of these live videos, and I plan to do some reaction videos. So if you have anything you want me to react to, make sure you tweet at me on Twitter and make sure you tell me, hey, do a reaction video to this. What do you think about that? And I'll be happy to do it. No problem at all. Let me see this question more. How do you get a starting job in IT? I want to get into that while I'm in college, so I have some related skills. So that's a very interesting question. Unfortunately, a lot of things in IT require personal they require experience, professional experience. My suggestion is, if you are in college right now, try to find an internship. Especially if you're involved in computer science. Internships will be the best way, because people, if they don't have to pay you, they love you. Right? So you can, and especially in the summertime, there are tons of summer internships. I don't know where you are, but if you're in Western New York, the company that I work for, they love to hire interns in the summertime. They love it. And they do everything from, automation to programming, DevOps. I mean, you name it. So if you are in that Western New York area and you're willing to, do something, definitely, reach out to me and I can help you out. But in your area anyways, internships are the best way to move forward, because then you'll get your experience, you'll have things under your belt, you'll get an idea of what project work looks like, what maybe they might be upgrading, they might have you assigned for certain tasks that are happening. You'll get in a feel for what it's like to work in a you know, a team environment, what is, you know, a ticketing system, you know, working on tickets and things like that, you know, closing tickets, dealing with budgets and forecasting and things. You'll see all of that. Yeah, like Red Hat Tiny said, most big corporations will have a paid internship. It'll be very minimal, but they will pay you and you will learn, and you will learn a lot. Just the experience will be invaluable to you. So many big corporations, many small corporations, a lot of people are actually they are looking for interns. Actually, I'll show you something funny. On my work laptop, because I supported an intern on my team, they actually gave me a sticker. I don't know if you guys can see this. It says, can you guys see that? Oh no, it says National Intern Day. Because I'm supporting interns. But they got paid and they were hired on board, and we gave them like a 3-month thing, and they, you know, they did good. But anyways, so that's a very good field. I enjoy others to get involved with. I think it's good. So I think this has been, yes, absolutely, Red Hat Tiny Brown. That's a very good alternative also to involve yourself in the university as well too. Absolutely. Okay, well, I like to keep these sessions under an hour. So we're hitting that 57-minute mark line, 58 minutes almost. So for those of you that are tuning in, thank you so much for tuning in, and I appreciate your support as always. I promise to be more regular with my videos. You know, maybe we'll do a live session once a week. I'll promise I will figure out a timing schedule for you guys. But in the meantime, keep a lookout. I will issue a tweet before I do actually a live session. So I will come out with videos. Tweet at me if you have any suggestions for videos, any ideas. Let me know what you guys think. And make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't already. Spread the word. Hit the bell icon so you know that when I do go live, you'll get a notification. I know I'm plugging this in here, but it'll help you guys know when I'm going to go live. So yeah, and I would appreciate if you can spread the content so I can get 1,000 subscribers. So that way I can actually go live on mobile, right? Right now I can't do that. I have to come to the computer and do it. But it would be nice to do things on the go as well too, and different events and things like that. So yeah, definitely, it would be great. But thank you so much for tuning in. This has been another episode of MuzzyBuzz. Always a pleasure to have you guys here, and you guys help me make this an amazing Saturday night for myself. So I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. So until next time, let's talk about it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We'll see you guys next time.
MuzzyBuzz, 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 MuzzyBuzz.